5-year-old girl calls the police and says 4 words. What they found shocked everyone. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The call came in just after midnight. Emergency. Dispatcher Helen Morris was about to end her shift when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was so faint she almost missed it. 1. What's your emergency? A pause, then 4 barely audible words. Please, help me. It was a child's voice, a little girl. Sweetheart, where are you? Are you hurt? Helen's fingers flew across the keyboard, signaling for the call to be traced. Dark, the tiny voice whispered. Cold, the line went dead. Chief Emily Foster was reviewing case files when the call came through to her phone. At 43, with steel blue eyes and premature silver streaking her dark hair, Emily had seen too much darkness in her 20 years on the force. But cases involving children always hit differently. We've got coordinates, Officer Rodriguez reported. 1487 Elmwood Drive, that old Victorian at the edge of town. Emily grabbed her keys. I know it. Get back up and meet me there. As she drove through the quiet streets of Riverdale, Emily's mind raced. That address had prompted calls. Before, reports of shouting, strange comings and goings at odd hours. Each time, officers found nothing conclusive. This time would be different. Something about that child's voice triggered memories Emily had spent decades trying to bury. Her younger sister Olivia had died from neglect when Emily was just 15. The system had failed Olivia. Emily had dedicated her life to ensuring no child suffered the same fate. The Victorian house loomed ahead, its once elegant facade now a mask of peeling paint and broken windows. Emily parked her cruiser, scanning the property as she approached. The yard was overgrown, littered with debris. A child's tricycle lay abandoned near the steps. Chief Foster, she identified herself, knocking firmly. Riverdale Police. Silence, answered her. Testing the handle, she found the door unlocked. It swung open with an ominous creak. The interior was worse than she'd imagined. Trash piled in corners, the stench of neglect heavy in the air. Emily moved carefully, her flashlight, cutting through the darkness. A sound caught her attention, so faint she nearly missed it. A whimper from somewhere upstairs. This is Chief Foster with the Riverdale Police, she called, keeping her voice steady as she climbed the creaking stairs. I'm here to help. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched before her with 4 doors. The sound led her to the last one on the left. What she found made her stomach turn. A small bedroom, empty except for a threadbare mattress on the floor. And there, huddled in the corner, was a little girl no older than 5. She was thin, frighteningly so, with tangled blonde hair and enormous blue eyes that seemed too large for her pale face. She clutched a worn blue stuffed rabbit to her chest. Hi. There, Emily said softly, holstering her weapon and crouching down. My name's Emily. I'm here to help you. Are you the one who called us? The child stared, not speaking, but offered a barely perceptible nod. What's your name, sweetheart? The girl's lips trembled. Lucy, she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Lucy, Emily repeated gently. You're very brave for calling us. I'm going to get you somewhere safe now, okay? The hospital corridor. Buzzed with activity as Emily paced outside the examination room where doctors attended to Lucy. Officer Rodriguez stood nearby, notebook in hand. Any sign of the mother? Emily asked. Rodriguez shook his head. House was empty. Neighbors say they haven't seen Sarah Miller in at least 3 days. We've put out an APB. Emily nodded, her jaw tight. The initial medical assessment had been grim. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and concerning bruises in various stages of healing. The pediatrician had used terms like failure to thrive and developmental delays. Background check came through, Rodriguez continued. Sarah Miller, 32. Former elementary school teacher until about 2 years ago when she was let go. Multiple complaints from neighbors about the property, but no previous CPS involvement. That's impossible, Emily muttered. A child doesn't end up like this overnight. Systems overloaded, Rodriguez said, Echoing what they both knew all too well, the door opened, and Dr. Patel emerged, clipboard in hand. Her expression was carefully professional, but Emily caught the flicker of distress in her eyes. "How is she?" Emily asked. "Physically, we're addressing the immediate concerns. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished. We've started her on fluids and will gradually introduce a proper nutrition plan." Dr. Patel hesitated. "Emotionally, it's harder to assess. She's barely spoken since arriving. She appears to be in a state of shock, which is common in cases like this." Emily's mind flashed back 28 years, to another hospital, another doctor. Almost the same words about Olivia. Except her sister hadn't made it. "Can I see her?" Dr. Patel nodded. "Actually, I think that might help. She seems to respond to you." Inside the room, Lucy looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. Her thin arms were connected to IV tubes, her blue rabbit tucked securely beside her. She wasn't asleep, though her eyes were half closed, watching the ceiling with a detached fascination that broke Emily's heart. "Hey, Lucy," Emily said softly, approaching the bed. "How are you feeling?" Lucy's eyes darted to Emily, recognition warming them slightly. She didn't speak, but her tiny hand reached out, fingers closing around Emily's with surprising strength. "The doctors are going to make you feel better," Emily continued, sitting in the chair beside the bed. "And I'm going to find out what happened to you. You're safe now." Lucy's eyelids drooped, the medication and exhaustion pulling her toward sleep. Still, she clung to Emily's hand, as if afraid she would disappear. Emily stayed, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of Lucy's chest. Her mind raced with questions. Where was Sarah Miller? Who had left this child alone in that house? And how long had Lucy been surviving on her own? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jessica Thompson from Child Protective Services entered, her expression sympathetic but professional. "Chief Foster," she greeted Emily. "I understand you were the responding officer." Emily nodded, carefully extracting her hand from Lucy's now slack grip. They stepped into the hallway to talk. "We'll need to place her in emergency foster care once she's medically cleared," Jessica explained. "I have a few calls out to find." "Placement. Foster care." Emily frowned. "She's already traumatized, moving her to another strange environment with people she doesn't know." "I understand your concern," Jessica interrupted gently. "But that's standard protocol. Unless you know of a suitable family member?" Emily didn't. Not yet, anyway. Her investigation had barely begun. "What about temporary police custody?" she found herself asking. "Until we locate her mother or other family?" Jessica's eyebrows rose. "That's highly unusual, Chief Foster. Plus, your job isn't exactly conducive to childcare." "I have vacation time accumulated," Emily responded, surprising herself with her own insistence. "I could take a leave of absence." Jessica studied her carefully. "This seems personal for you." It was, more than Emily cared to admit. She saw Olivia in Lucy's eyes, in the way the child curled into herself, in her silence that spoke volumes. "Someone needs to advocate for her," Emily said finally. "She called for help and I answered. I can't just walk away." Before Jessica could respond, a commotion erupted down the hall. A woman's voice, slurred but insistent, cut through the hospital's subdued atmosphere. "Where's my daughter? I have a right to see her." Emily turned to see a disheveled blonde woman, arguing with hospital security. Even from a distance, Emily could tell she was intoxicated, pupils dilated, movements erratic. "Sarah Miller, I presume," Emily murmured, moving toward the disturbance. The woman saw her approaching and zeroed in on the badge. "You the one who took my Lucy? She needs special care, you know. I was just out getting her medicine." The lie was so transparent it would have been laughable if the situation weren't so tragic. Emily kept her expression neutral. "Ms. Miller, I'm Chief Foster. Your daughter was found alone in your house. She's suffering from severe neglect." "That's not true." Sarah's voice rose hysterically. "I'm a good mother. Lucy has issues. She makes things up, gets into trouble. You don't understand." Emily had heard these excuses before from her own parents after Olivia was hospitalized. The denials, the deflections, the desperate attempts to shift blame. "Ms. Miller, you're under arrest for child endangerment and neglect," Emily stated, her voice steady despite the anger churning inside her. She recited the Miranda rights as Rodriguez moved in to assist. They led Sarah away. Emily caught a glimpse of Lucy standing in the doorway of her room, Blue Rabbit clutched to her chest. The child's expression wasn't fear or sadness, but a strange resigned understanding that seemed ancient in her young face. Emily realized then that this case would change everything, for Lucy, for herself, and for the connection forming between them that seemed to transcend the boundaries of professional duty. She would not fail this child, not like the system had failed Olivia, not like it failed so many others. Whatever it took, Lucy would have a chance at the life she deserved. The next morning found Emily asleep in the hospital chair beside Lucy's bed, her neck stiff, and her back protesting the awkward position. She woke to find Lucy watching her, those enormous blue eyes studying her face with quiet intensity. "Good morning," Emily smiled, stretching discreetly. "Did you sleep okay?" Lucy nodded slightly, still clutching her Blue Rabbit. Dr. Patel had explained that Lucy had barely let go of the stuffed animal since her arrival. It was her only possession from home, her one constant in a world that had proven dangerously inconsistent. "Are you hungry? The nurse left some breakfast for you." Another small nod. Progress of sorts. Emily helped Lucy sit up and arrange the tray of oatmeal, toast, and juice. She noticed how Lucy's eyes widened at the amount of food, her thin fingers hesitantly reaching for the spoon as if expecting the meal to be taken away. "It's all for you," Emily assured her. "You can eat as much as you want." While Lucy ate, taking careful, measured bites, Emily checked her phone. There were multiple messages from the station, and one from Jessica Thompson requesting an urgent meeting. Sarah Miller had been processed and was awaiting arraignment, still incoherent and demanding to see her daughter. A soft knock at the door announced Dr. Patel's arrival for morning rounds. The doctor smiled warmly at Lucy before turning to Emily. "She's responding well to treatment. The blood work shows improvement already, though full recovery will take time." Dr. Patel lowered her voice. "Ms. Thompson from CPS is here. She's asking about discharge plans." Emily's stomach tightened. "Already?" Lucy's hardly had time to— "I understand your concerns," Dr. Patel interrupted gently. "But medically speaking, she could be released tomorrow, provided she has appropriate care." Emily glanced at Lucy, who had abandoned her breakfast to listen to their conversation, her small face tense with apprehension. "Would you excuse me a moment?" Emily asked, touching Lucy's hand reassuringly. "I'll be right back." In the hallway, Jessica Thompson waited with a manila folder and a sympathetic but firm expression. "I've arranged emergency placement with the Wilsons," she began without preamble. "They're experienced foster parents, excellent with traumatized children." "It's too soon," Emily objected. "Lucy needs stability, not another upheaval." Jessica sighed. "Chief Foster, I appreciate your concern, but this is how the system works. The Wilsons are good people." "I want to apply for temporary guardianship," Emily interrupted. The words seemed to surprise them both. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. "That's unusual. The process is complex, and there's no guarantee a judge would approve it, especially given your profession and single status. I'll take a leave of absence. I have the space, the resources, and most importantly, Lucy trusts me." Emily hadn't planned this argument, but now that she'd started, she felt the rightness of it settling in her bones. "Let me help her through this transition at least," Jessica studied her. "This is becoming personal for you. Maybe it should be personal for all of us," Emily countered. "Lucy deserves more than to be processed through a system that's already failed her once." Their discussion was interrupted by a commotion from Lucy's room. Both women rushed back to find Lucy in the midst of what appeared to be a panic attack, her breathing rapid and shallow, small body trembling violently. "Lucy, what happened?" Emily hurried to her side. The nurse looked distressed. I just mentioned that she'd be going to a nice new home soon. She became agitated immediately. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, speaking softly. Lucy, look at me. You're safe. No one is taking you anywhere right now. Breathe with me. Gradually, Lucy's breathing steadied, but she kept a white-knuckled grip on Emily's hand, her eyes pleading silently. Don't. Leave me, she whispered, the words so faint Emily almost missed them. Jessica watched this interaction with a thoughtful expression. When Lucy had calmed, she motioned for Emily to step outside again. I'll support your temporary guardianship application, she said, surprising Emily. What I just witnessed. That child has formed an attachment to you that shouldn't be disrupted if we can help it. But, she added firmly, there will be conditions. Home inspections, regular check-ins, therapy for Lucy. Of course, Emily agreed immediately. Whatever it takes. As they worked out the details, Emily felt equal parts terror and determination. She had just volunteered to become guardian to a deeply traumatized 5-year-old. Her apartment wasn't child-proofed, her schedule was chaotic, and she had zero parenting experience. Yet looking through the door at Lucy, who had returned to clutching her blue rabbit and watching the doorway anxiously, Emily knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most important promises were the ones you never planned to make. Emily's apartment had never felt so inadequate. Standing in the center of her living room, she surveyed the space with new eyes that now saw potential hazards, unsuitable furniture, and a striking absence of anything that might comfort a child. It's not much, she murmured to Rodriguez, who had volunteered his day off to help prepare for Lucy's arrival. Maybe this was a terrible idea. It's a home, Rodriguez countered, setting down another box of borrowed children's items, which is more than she had before. Emily had spent the past 48 hours in a flurry of activity. The temporary guardianship hearing had been expedited thanks to Jessica Thompson's support and Judge Harmon's compassion for Lucy's situation. Sarah Miller had waived her right to contest, more concerned with her own legal troubles than her daughter's welfare. Now, with Lucy due to be discharged within hours, Emily was transforming her spare room home office into a child's bedroom. The borrowed twin bed looked forlorn with only plain white sheets, and the walls remained the same austere beige they'd been since Emily moved in 5 years ago. What does a 5-year-old even like? Emily asked, more to herself than Rodriguez. Pink, purple princesses? Rodriguez chuckled. My niece is obsessed with dinosaurs in space. Kids are individuals, you know. Emily nodded, realizing how little she knew about Lucy's preferences. The girl had spoken barely a dozen words since her rescue, none of them about favorite colors or toys. A knock at the door announced Kelly Chen from the department, arms full of shopping bags. Reinforcements have arrived, she announced cheerfully. I raided my daughter's outgrown clothes. She's 7 now, but these should fit Lucy with some room to grow. As they sorted through the donations, more colleagues arrived. Martinez with children's books, Washington with a nightlight shaped like a moon, Diaz with a small table and chair said his kids had outgrown. Emily was overwhelmed by the generosity. You know, Kelly said, arranging colorful clothes in the freshly cleaned dresser, when my husband and I adopted May, we were terrified we'd do everything wrong. Our apartment was half this size, and neither of us had a clue about parenting. How did you manage? Emily asked, desperate for reassurance. Kelly smiled. One day at a time. Kids don't need perfect. They need consistent. They need safe. She paused, touching Emily's arm. Lucy's lucky to have you. Emily wasn't so sure, but there was no time to second-guess now. Soon she would be bringing a traumatized child into this hastily prepared space, and somehow trying to create a semblance of normalcy. The hospital discharge process was mercifully straightforward. Dr. Patel provided detailed instructions for Lucy's continued care, a nutrition plan, vitamin supplements, and recommendations for pediatric therapy specialists. Lucy, dressed in clothes from Kelly's donation pile, remained silent throughout, her blue rabbit firmly in hand. She's made remarkable physical progress, Dr. Patel told Emily quietly. But the emotional healing will take much longer. Be patient with her and with yourself. The drive home was silent, Lucy staring out the window with wide, wary eyes. Emily kept glancing in the rearview mirror, still half disbelieving that this child was now temporarily in her care. "We're here," Emily announced as they pulled up to her apartment building. "It's on the second floor. I hope you'll like it." Lucy followed Emily inside, her movements cautious, like a small animal expecting a trap. She paused in the doorway of her new bedroom, taking in the freshly made bed with its sky-blue comforter, a last-minute purchase after Emily realized white sheets seemed too clinical. The small lamp on the nightstand, and the bookshelf stocked with colorful titles. "This is your room," Emily explained, watching Lucy's reaction carefully. "We can change anything you don't like." Lucy stepped into the room slowly, touching the comforter with hesitant fingers. She looked back at Emily, a question in her eyes that she couldn't or wouldn't voice. "Yes, it's really all yours," Emily assured her, guessing at the unspoken concern. "No one else will use it." That first evening established the pattern of their early days together. Lucy watched Emily prepare dinner with the same intense focus. She seemed to apply to everything, as if memorizing each movement. She ate carefully, methodically, still with that underlying anxiety that the food might disappear at any moment. Bedtime brought the first real challenge. Lucy stood in her new pajamas, soft cotton with little stars, staring at the bed with apprehension. "Would you like me to read you a story?" Emily offered, gesturing to the bookshelf. Lucy nodded slowly, selecting a book about a rabbit, perhaps because it reminded her of her stuffed companion. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, and after a moment's hesitation, Lucy climbed up beside her, keeping a careful distance. The story was simple and sweet, about a rabbit finding his way home through a forest. As Emily read, she noticed Lucy gradually relaxing, the rigid set of her small shoulders softening slightly. When the story ended, Lucy didn't move. Her eyes were on the nightlight, which cast gentle moonbeams across the ceiling. Time for sleep. "Now," Emily said softly, "I'll be just down the hall if you need anything at all, okay?" Lucy slipped under the covers, still clutching her rabbit. Emily tucked the comforter around her, feeling hopelessly out of her depth, but determined to provide comfort. "Good night, Lucy. Sleep well." Emily had just reached the door when a small voice stopped her. "Is it locked?" Emily turned, confused. "What, sweetheart?" "The door," Lucy whispered, her first full sentence since arriving. "Is it locked?" Understanding dawned with horrible clarity. Lucy had been locked in that room, in that house. "No," Emily said firmly, fighting to keep her voice steady despite the anger flaring inside her. "The doors in this house don't lock from the outside. You can come out anytime you want to." Lucy processed this information, her brow furrowed skeptically. "I promise," Emily added. "Would you like me to show you?" She demonstrated the door, opening and closing it, showing that the only lock was on the inside. A privacy lock Lucy could control herself. "See? You're not trapped here. This is a home, not a prison." Something shifted in Lucy's expression. Not quite trust, but perhaps the first seed of it. "Okay," she whispered, settling back under the covers. Emily left the door slightly ajar and retreated to her living room, emotionally exhausted. She'd faced armed suspects with less anxiety than she felt now, responsible for this fragile child with her haunted eyes and cautious movements. Her phone rang, Jessica Thompson checking in. "How's the transition going?" Jessica asked. "We're managing," Emily replied, unwilling to admit her insecurities. "Lucy's settling in. Remember, the home visit is scheduled for Friday. I'll need to see her room, make sure the apartment is child-safe, the usual protocol." "We'll be ready," Emily assured her, glancing around at the decidedly unchild-proofed space. More tasks for her growing list. After hanging up, Emily sat with her case notes on Sarah Miller. The woman remained in custody, unable to make bail, her statements increasingly incoherent. The investigation had revealed a pattern of neglect stretching back months, possibly years. Neighbors reported seeing Sarah only sporadically, often appearing intoxicated or disoriented. No one had thought to check on Lucy. A sound from the hallway interrupted Emily's thoughts. Lucy stood in the doorway of her room, trembling slightly. "Lucy, what's wrong, sweetheart?" Emily set aside the files, moving toward the child. "Bad dream," Lucy whispered, hugging her rabbit tighter. Emily knelt to Lucy's level. "Do you want to talk about it?" Lucy shook her head. "That's okay. Bad dreams can't hurt you, but they're still scary. Would you like some water? Or maybe a light?" Aunt Lucy hesitated, then pointed to the couch where Emily had been sitting. "You want to sit with me for a while?" A nod. Emily settled back on the couch and Lucy climbed up beside her, still maintaining that careful distance. They sat in silence, Lucy gradually relaxing as the minutes passed. "My mom's not coming back, is she?" Lucy asked suddenly, her voice small but surprisingly clear. Emily considered her answer carefully. "Your mom has some problems she needs to work on," she said finally. "Right now she can't take care of you properly. That's why you're staying with me." Lucy nodded, as if this confirmed something she already knew. She forgets things, important things, like food and me. The simple statement, delivered with such matter-of-fact acceptance, broke Emily's heart. This child had learned to expect neglect as the natural order of things. "That wasn't your fault," Emily said firmly. "None of what happened was your fault, Lucy. Adults are supposed to take care of children, not the other way around." Lucy didn't respond, but she shifted slightly closer on the couch. It was a tiny movement, almost imperceptible. But to Emily, it felt like a monumental victory. That night established another pattern. When the nightmares came, Lucy would find her way to Emily, and they would sit together in quiet companionship until the fear subsided. Sometimes Lucy would speak, brief, startling insights into her life before. Mostly, though, she seemed content with the simple reassurance of Emily's presence. Slowly, day by day, they were building something that might someday resemble trust. Emily woke with a start, her internal alarm clock alerting her that something wasn't right. The apartment was too quiet. Glancing at her bedside clock, 5:47 a.m., she rose quickly and moved to check on Lucy. The child's bed was empty, the covers thrown back, the blue rabbit missing from its usual place on the pillow. "Lucy?" Emily called, fighting down a surge of panic. She checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the small balcony, all empty. The front door remained locked from the inside, so Lucy hadn't left the apartment. But where could a small child hide in such a limited space? Then Emily noticed the hall closet door slightly ajar. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle Lucy if she was inside. "Lucy, are you in there, sweetheart?" A small shuffling sound confirmed her suspicion. Emily carefully opened the door to find Lucy huddled in the back corner of the closet, knees drawn to her chest, rabbit clutched tightly. Her face was tear-streaked, eyes wide with fear. "Hey," Emily said softly, kneeling down. "What happened? Did you have another bad dream?" Lucy shook her head, her bottom lip trembling. "Are you hurt? Scared?" A small nod at the second question. "Can you tell me what scared you?" Lucy's gaze dropped to the floor. "You were talking on the phone," she whispered. "About me." Emily's mind raced, trying to recall her recent conversations. Last night she'd spoken with Jessica Thompson about the upcoming home visit, and with Commander Richards about extending her leave of absence. "You heard me talking about you?" Emily prompted gently. Lucy nodded again. "You said I might have to go away, to a different place." Understanding dawned. Lucy must have overheard Emily discussing the conditions of the temporary guardianship, the requirement that they appear before the judge again in 30 days to reassess the situation. "Oh, Lucy," Emily sighed, sitting down cross-legged in front of the closet. "I'm so sorry you heard that and were worried. Would you like to come out so we can talk about it properly?" After a moment's hesitation, Lucy crawled out of the closet. Though she kept her distance, poised as if ready to retreat again at the first sign of trouble. Jessica, Ms. Thompson, and I were discussing a meeting we have with the judge, Emily explained carefully. It's a check-in to make sure you're doing okay here with me. I wasn't planning to send you away. Promise? Lucy asked, her voice barely audible. The question carried weight far beyond its 2 syllables. How could Emily promise something when the decision ultimately rested with the judge, with Jessica, with a system that was overworked and imperfect? Yet looking at this child, who had endured so much already, and who was now asking for nothing more than basic security, Emily couldn't bring herself to offer a qualified answer. I promise I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and to keep us together, she said firmly. That's what I want too, Lucy. Lucy studied her face with that intense focus, searching for deception or uncertainty. Emily met her gaze steadily, letting her see the truth of her commitment. After what felt like an eternity, Lucy edged closer until she stood directly in front of Emily. I don't want to go back in the dark, she whispered, or be alone again. You won't be, Emily said, opening her arms in invitation. Not if I have anything to say about it. For the first time since her rescue, Lucy willingly moved into a hug, her small body tense at first, then gradually relaxing against Emily. They stayed that way for several minutes, the morning sun beginning to filter through the blinds, casting strips of golden light across the hallway floor. Later that morning after breakfast, Emily brought out some drawing supplies borrowed from Kelly. I thought you might like to draw, she suggested, setting out paper and colorful markers. Unless you'd prefer to watch TV or read. Lucy approached the table cautiously, examining the rainbow of markers with evident interest. She selected a blue one, the same shade as her rabbit, and began to draw with careful concentration. Emily busied herself with housework, giving Lucy space while remaining nearby. After about 20 minutes, Lucy held up her drawing. It's for you, she said, simply. The picture showed 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall with dark hair, one small with yellow hair. Behind them was a square that Emily guessed represented her apartment. Above it all was a bright yellow sun, with an unmistakable smile. It's beautiful, Lucy, Emily said, genuinely touched by this simple gift, the first voluntary offering from the child. Is this you and me? Lucy nodded. At home, she added, pointing to the square. Home. The word hung in the air between them, fragile but hopeful. Can I put it on the refrigerator? Emily asked. So we can see it every day? Another nod, this one, accompanied by the ghost of a smile. Just a slight upward tilt at the corners of Lucy's mouth, but it transformed her face, giving Emily a glimpse of the child she might have been without trauma's heavy shadow. The home visit with Jessica Thompson. Later that week went better than Emily had anticipated. Lucy, while still quiet, didn't hide or show the extreme anxiety Emily had feared. She answered Jessica's gentle questions with nods or single words, and even showed her the drawing on the refrigerator. She's making remarkable progress, Jessica told Emily as they spoke privately while Lucy remained in her room. Children are incredibly resilient, especially when they feel secure. But she hesitated. But what? Emily prompted, bracing herself for concerns about her parenting abilities or the suitability of her apartment. Sarah Miller's sister has surfaced, Jessica explained. Victoria Mason. She lives in Seattle and claims she had no idea about Lucy's situation. She's filed for familial custody. Emily felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. When? Yesterday. She's flying in next week to meet with me and presumably to meet Lucy. Does Lucy even know her? Has she ever met this? Aunt Jessica consulted her notes. According to Victoria, she met Lucy once as an infant, before she relocated to the West Coast. She and Sarah had a falling out years ago and lost contact. So she's essentially a stranger, Emily said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. And now she wants to uproot Lucy again, just when she's beginning to feel safe. I understand your frustration, Jessica said diplomatically. But the courts generally favor blood relatives in these situations. provided they pass the necessary background checks and home studies. And if Lucy doesn't want to go with her, does her opinion matter at all in this? Given her age, it's a consideration but not the determining factor. Jessica's expression softened. I know you've become attached to Lucy, and clearly she's bonding with you. But this was always a temporary arrangement, Emily. After Jessica left, Emily sat in the living room trying to process this new threat to the fragile stability she and Lucy had begun to build. The thought of Lucy being taken across the country to live with a relative she didn't know, who hadn't bothered to stay in touch with her sister enough to even know about Lucy's existence, seemed cruel and unnecessary. Yet Emily knew how the system worked. Blood ties were prioritized, often above all other considerations. Without extremely compelling evidence that Victoria Mason was unsuitable, the courts would likely favor her claim. A small sound alerted Emily to Lucy's presence. The child stood in the hallway, arms wrapped around her middle in that self-protective gesture Emily had come to recognize. "Is the lady making me leave?" Lucy asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. Emily patted the couch beside her, and Lucy came to sit, closer than she would have dared just days ago. "Ms. Thompson told me that your Aunt Victoria wants to meet you," Emily explained carefully. "She's your mom's sister, and she lives in Seattle, which is very far from here." Lucy frowned. "I don't have an aunt." "You might not remember her. She said she met you when you were a baby." Lucy absorbed this information, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Does she want to take me away from you?" The direct question deserved a direct answer, however painful. "She might. She's asked the court, the people who decide where children should live, to let you come stay with her instead." Lucy's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked at Emily with a determination that seemed far beyond her years. "I won't go," she stated firmly. "I'll run away and come back here." "Lucy," Emily began, alarmed by this declaration. "Running away is very dangerous, especially for someone your age." "You promised," Lucy interrupted, her voice rising with emotion. "You promised I could stay." The accusation hit Emily like a physical blow. She had promised, knowing full well the limitations of her authority in this situation. "I promised to do everything in my power," Emily reminded her gently. "And I will, Lucy. I'll talk to the judge, to Ms. Thompson, to anyone who will listen. I'll explain how well you're doing here, how much progress you've made." Lucy seemed unconvinced. "Grown-ups say things," she muttered, retreating emotionally if not physically. "They don't always mean them." The simple truth of this statement, born from Lucy's experience with adults who had repeatedly failed her, left Emily momentarily speechless. How could she argue when Lucy's life had taught her this bitter lesson so thoroughly? Instead of empty reassurances, Emily opted for honesty. "You're right, Lucy. Sometimes grown-ups make promises they don't keep. Sometimes they let children down, and that's terribly wrong." She took a deep breath. "I can't control what the judge decides, but I can promise you this. I will never stop caring about you, and I will never stop fighting for what's best for you, even if that's hard or complicated." Lucy studied her face with that searching gaze that seemed to penetrate straight to Emily's soul. "I believe you," she said finally. And in those 3 simple words, Emily heard the most precious gift of all. Trust, hard-won and fragile, but unmistakably real. Victoria Mason arrived precisely at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, looking nothing like Sarah Miller. Where Lucy's mother had been thin and haggard, Victoria was polished and confident, her designer handbag and carefully coiffed blonde hair suggesting financial comfort. She stood on Emily's doorstep with a professional smile and sharp, assessing eyes. "You must be Chief Foster," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Victoria Mason, thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Emily shook her hand, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "Please come in. Lucy is expecting you." This wasn't entirely true. Emily had explained to Lucy that her aunt was coming to visit, but the child had responded with uncharacteristic stubbornness, refusing to discuss it further or show any interest in the impending meeting. Victoria stepped into the apartment, her gaze sweeping the modest space. "Quaint," she murmured in a tone that suggested this wasn't a compliment. "Lucy's in the living room," Emily said, leading the way. "She's been doing some drawing this morning." Lucy sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table, surrounded by markers and paper. Her blue rabbit sat beside her, a silent guardian. At their entrance, she looked up briefly, then returned to her drawing with deliberate focus. "Lucy, sweetheart," Emily said gently, "this is your Aunt Victoria. She's your mom's sister, the one I told you about." Victoria moved forward with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello, Lucy. My goodness, you look just like your mother did at your age. I've brought you something." She produced a beautifully wrapped package from her handbag and held it out. Lucy stared at it without moving. "It's a gift," Victoria prompted when Lucy made no move to accept it. "Don't you want to see what it is?" Lucy glanced at Emily, who nodded encouragingly despite her misgivings. Slowly, Lucy took the package and carefully unwrapped it to reveal an expensive-looking doll with blonde hair and a frilly dress. "Do you like it?" Victoria asked. "I have a whole room full of toys like this at my house in Seattle. You'd have your own bedroom, too, with a canopy bed and a view of the mountains." Lucy set the doll aside without comment and picked up her blue rabbit, again, holding it protectively against her chest. Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, perhaps we could get to know each other a bit. I'd love to hear about what you've been doing since you came to stay with Chief Foster." The emphasis on stay wasn't lost on Emily. Victoria was clearly establishing the temporary nature of their arrangement. When Lucy remained silent, Emily intervened. "Lucy's been doing wonderfully. She's starting kindergarten in the fall, and her therapist says she's making excellent progress. Why don't I make some coffee, and you two can chat?" It was a transparent attempt to give Victoria time alone with Lucy, though Emily had no intention of going far. She busied herself in the kitchen, keeping the living room in her peripheral vision. Victoria moved to sit on the couch, smoothing her expensive slacks. "Your mom and I grew up in a big house in Oregon," she began, her voice artificially bright. "We had a swing set and a treehouse in the backyard. Our house in Seattle has a beautiful garden, too. My husband David loves to barbecue on the weekends." Lucy continued drawing, giving no indication she was listening. "We don't have children of our own," Victoria continued undeterred, "so you would have our full attention. The elementary school near us is one of the best in the state. They have an excellent arts program. I noticed you enjoy drawing." At this, Lucy looked up. "I want to stay with Emily," she said clearly, her first words since Victoria's arrival. Victoria's smile faltered. "I understand you've become attached to Chief Foster. She's obviously been kind to you during this difficult time. But family belongs together, Lucy. I'm your aunt, your blood relative." "Don't know you," Lucy replied simply, returning to her drawing. Emily returned with coffee, having heard the exchange. The discomfort in the room was palpable. "Lucy has been through a traumatic experience," she explained diplomatically. "Building trust takes time." Victoria accepted the coffee with a tight smile. Of course, trauma is precisely why stability and permanent placement with family is so important. She turned to Lucy again. "Did you know I have a swimming pool at my house and a little dog named Pepper who loves children?" Lucy remained unmoved by these enticements. After several more failed attempts at conversation, Victoria set down her barely touched coffee and stood. "I think that's enough for today. Clearly, Lucy needs time to process this." She turned to Emily, her professional veneer slipping slightly. "I'll be meeting with Ms. Thompson this afternoon to discuss next steps. I appreciate your efforts with my niece, but surely you understand that Lucy's place is with family." Emily walked her to the door, maintaining her composure with effort. "Lucy's well-being is what matters most," she said carefully. "She's been through tremendous upheaval. Stability and continuity of care are crucial right now." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I couldn't agree more. which is why permanent placement with family, rather than a temporary arrangement with a single police officer, is clearly in her best interest. She glanced back toward the living room. I'll be in touch, Chief Foster. I expect we'll see each other at the custody hearing. After Victoria left, Emily returned to find Lucy gathering her drawing supplies with unusual haste. Lucy, are you okay? Lucy nodded without looking up, but her movements were jerky, agitated. Would you like to talk about meeting your aunt? She's not my aunt, Lucy said firmly, abandoning her effort to cap the markers. I don't want to go with her, ever. Emily sat on the floor beside Lucy. Can you tell me why? Lucy hesitated, struggling to articulate her feelings. She smiles wrong, she finally said, like the doctor at the old place who said I was making up stories. The statement sent a chill through Emily. Children often had intuitive insights that adults missed, particularly children like Lucy, who had learned to be hypervigilant about adult behavior as a survival mechanism. What stories, Lucy? What did the doctor think you were making up? Lucy's shoulders hunched protectively. About being hungry and locked in. He said I was confused, that Mom was taking good care of me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He told her I needed more discipline. Emily fought to keep her expression neutral despite the fury building inside her. This was new information. A doctor who had apparently encountered signs of Lucy's neglect and not only failed to report it, but actively contributed to the problem. Do you remember this doctor's name, or where his office was? Lucy shook her head. It was a long time ago. Mom was different then. She got more medicine from him. Prescription medication abuse. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. This doctor, whoever he was, had potentially enabled Sarah's addiction while dismissing evidence of child neglect. Thank you for telling me, Lucy. That was very brave. Emily hesitated, then added, I know meeting Victoria was hard for you. I want you to know that I heard what you said about wanting to stay here. I'm going to tell the judge and Ms. Thompson how you feel. Lucy looked up, her eyes searching Emily's face. Will they listen? It was the million-dollar question. Would Lucy's preferences be considered? Or would the system's bias toward blood relatives prevail regardless of the child's wishes? I hope so, Emily said honestly. Some people believe children should always be with blood relatives if possible. What do you believe? Lucy asked, the directness of her gaze unsettling in its intensity. Emily chose her words carefully. I believe children should be with people who love them, protect them, and make them feel safe. Sometimes that's blood family, and sometimes it's not. Lucy seemed satisfied with this answer. She returned to her drawing, adding a small figure to the picture she'd been working on all morning. What are you drawing? Emily asked, welcoming the change of subject. Our family, Lucy replied, concentrating on her work. Emily leaned closer, to see a recognizable rendition of herself and Lucy holding hands. The new figure she was adding appeared to be the blue rabbit, elevated to family status in Lucy's world. Notably absent was any representation of Victoria Mason or Sarah Miller. That afternoon, while Lucy napped, a habit Emily encouraged as the child still tired easily, Emily made some calls. She reached out to Richard Turner, the attorney who had helped with the temporary guardianship application. Victoria Mason filed for custody yesterday, Richard confirmed after checking the records. Her petition emphasizes blood relationship, financial stability, and her ability to provide Lucy with a two-parent household. What are our chances of countering it? Emily asked directly. Richard's sigh was answer enough, but he elaborated. It's an uphill battle, Emily. The courts have a strong preference for family placement. Your position as a single woman with a demanding career doesn't help. I'm on leave, Emily pointed out, and I'm willing to make whatever career adjustments necessary, which is commendable, but Mason can argue that she doesn't need to make such adjustments. Her background check is clean, her financials are solid, and initial home study reports from Washington State are favorable. Lucy doesn't want to go with her, Emily said, frustration creeping into her voice. Shouldn't that count for something? Given her age, her preferences will be considered but won't be determinative. The judge will be looking at the totality of circumstances and what's in Lucy's best long-term interest. After hanging up, Emily stared at the drawing Lucy had made. Their little family of 2 plus 1 well-loved stuffed rabbit. The thought of Lucy being taken across the country to live with strangers, however biologically related, made her physically ill. She had promised to fight for Lucy, and she would. But for the first time since taking on this challenge, Emily faced the very real possibility that her best might not be enough. The nightmares returned with a vengeance that night. Emily woke to Lucy's terrified screams, bolting from her bed to find the child tangled in her sheets, fighting invisible enemies. "Lucy, wake up," Emily called softly, careful not to touch her until she was more alert. "It's just a dream. You're safe." Lucy's eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize Emily or her surroundings. Then awareness returned, bringing with it a flood of tears. "She's coming to take me away," Lucy sobbed as Emily gathered her into a gentle embrace. "I was calling for you, but you couldn't hear me." "Shh, it's okay," Emily soothed, rocking slightly. "I'm right here. I can hear you just fine." They sat together until Lucy's tears subsided, replaced by occasional hiccups. Emily stroked her hair, noting absently that it was growing out now, the uneven cut from before beginning to look healthier. "Would you like some warm milk?" Emily asked. "My mom used to make it for me when I had bad dreams." Lucy nodded, her face still pressed against Emily's shoulder. In the kitchen, Lucy perched on a stool at the counter while Emily warmed milk in a saucepan, adding a touch of honey. The domesticity of the moment struck Emily suddenly. How natural this felt now, caring for Lucy in these small ways. "Want to talk about your dream?" Emily asked, sliding the mug of warm milk across the counter. Lucy cupped her small hands around the mug, breathing in the sweet steam. "I was back in the dark place," she said quietly. "But this time the lady with the wrong smile was there too. She locked the door and took my rabbit." Emily's heart ached at the simple yet revealing symbolism of the nightmare. "You know I would never let anyone lock you up again, right?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "But what if the judge makes me go? Ms. Thompson said judges decide where kids live." It was a perceptive question, one that Emily had been wrestling with herself. How could she promise Lucy something she couldn't guarantee? "Do one. You remember when we talked about how I would fight for you?" Emily asked, choosing her words carefully. Lucy nodded. "That means I'll talk to the judge and explain why you feel safe here, and why moving you away might not be good for you, right? Now, the judge's job is to choose what's best for you, and I'm going to make sure she has all the information she needs to make a good decision." Lucy seemed to accept this, though doubt lingered in her eyes. She sipped her milk thoughtfully. "Can I tell the judge I want to stay with you?" "We can ask," Emily said. "Sometimes judges talk to children to hear what they want, especially when they're as smart and clear as you are." This seemed to reassure Lucy slightly. She finished her milk and handed the empty mug to Emily. "I don't want to go back to sleep." Yet, she admitted, the dream might come back. Emily glanced at the clock, 3:17 a.m. "How about we camp out on the couch for a little while? We could read another story." Lucy retrieved her blue rabbit from her bedroom, and they settled on the couch with a blanket and a picture book. Emily read quietly, and soon Lucy's eyelids began to droop despite her determination to stay awake. Eventually, her breathing deepened into sleep, her small body relaxed against Emily's side. Emily remained awake, watching the rise and fall of Lucy's chest, contemplating the fierce protective love that had grown within her for this child in such a short time. She had faced armed criminals with less fear than she felt now, confronting the possibility of losing Lucy to Victoria Mason's custody claim. The next morning, Emily called Dr. Amelia Parker, Lucy's therapist, to discuss the custody situation. Lucy's highly resistant to the idea of living with her aunt, Emily explained. She had nightmares after yesterday's meeting. Dr. Parker sighed. "I'm not surprised. Lucy's beginning to form a secure attachment with you, which is remarkable progress given her history of neglect. Disrupting that attachment could be psychologically damaging. Would you be willing to state that professionally? For the court, I mean. Of course, Dr. Parker replied without hesitation. In my professional opinion, Lucy's best interests lie in maintaining the stability and security she's found with you. A transition to an unknown relative at this stage of her recovery could cause significant regression. Emily felt a surge of gratitude. Dr. Parker's expert testimony would carry weight with the court. Later that morning, Jessica Thompson arrived for her scheduled home visit. She seemed troubled as she observed Lucy, who was more withdrawn than she had been in recent weeks. Victoria Mason made quite an impression at our meeting yesterday, Jessica commented, as she and Emily spoke privately in the kitchen. She's very determined. What did you make of her? Emily asked, keeping her voice neutral. Jessica considered her response carefully. She's certainly qualified on paper. Financially stable, spacious home, supportive husband. She's already enrolled in parenting classes and is setting up therapy contacts in Seattle. But, Emily prompted, sensing Jessica's reservation. But I'm concerned about her motivation, Jessica admitted. When I asked why she hadn't maintained contact with Sarah or attempted to locate Lucy earlier, her answers were vague. There's something performative about her interest. Emily nodded, relieved that Jessica had picked up on the same unease she had felt during Victoria's visit. Lucy had nightmares about her last night, Emily shared. She specifically mentioned Victoria's smile feeling wrong to her. Jessica's eyebrows rose. Children often have remarkably accurate intuition about adults, she observed. Still, the courts typically require more concrete reasons to deny a family placement. What about Lucy's own wishes? She's made it very clear she wants to stay here. Her preferences will be considered, Jessica said, repeating the now familiar refrain. But at 5, they're not determinative. As Jessica prepared to leave, she paused in the doorway, her expression softening. For what it's worth, Emily, I think you're exactly what Lucy needs right now. I'll make that clear in my report to the court. The week before the custody hearing passed in a blur of preparations. Emily gathered documents, testimonials, and evidence of Lucy's progress in her care. Dr. Parker submitted a detailed report, emphasizing the importance of maintaining Lucy's current placement. Even Commander Richards wrote a letter supporting Emily's request for extended leave and affirming her character and commitment. Meanwhile, Lucy grew increasingly anxious as she sensed the tension around her. She became clingy, reluctant to let Emily out of her sight even for brief periods. At night, she would check and recheck that her blue rabbit was safely beside her before she could fall asleep. "Is the judge nice?" Lucy asked one evening as Emily tucked her in. "Judge Harmon is very fair," Emily replied carefully. "Her job is to listen to everyone and make the best decision for you." Lucy nodded, her small face serious. "I practiced what I want to tell her." "You did?" Emily asked, surprised and touched by this revelation. "Uh-huh. Dr. Parker helped me. She said to use my words to tell how I feel." "That's very good advice," Emily agreed. "Would you like to practice with me?" Lucy shook her head. "It's a surprise," she said solemnly. "But it's all true." The morning of the hearing arrived with a sense of gravity that even Lucy seemed to feel. Emily helped her dress in a simple blue dress that matched her rabbit, which Lucy insisted on bringing along. "For Brave," she explained, clutching it to her chest. The family court was designed to be less intimidating than criminal court, but it still held an austere formality that made Lucy press closer to Emily's side as they entered. Victoria Mason was already there, immaculately dressed in a conservative suit, her husband David beside her. Emily had never met the man before. He was tall and distinguished-looking, with salt and pepper hair and an expression of polite detachment. Richard. Turner met them at the entrance, briefcase in hand. "We're as prepared as we can be," he assured Emily. "Dr. Parker is here, and Jessica Thompson's report is surprisingly favorable toward your position." "Surprisingly?" Emily questioned. Richard offered a small smile. CPS workers typically favor blood relatives unless there are significant concerns. Jessica going out on a limb for you means something. The proceedings began with formal introductions. Judge Eleanor Harmon, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with penetrating eyes and a no-nonsense manner, reviewed the case files before addressing the court. This hearing concerns the custody placement of minor child Lucy Miller, age 5. She began. I have before me competing petitions from Victoria Mason, maternal aunt, and Emily Foster, current temporary guardian. Let me be clear from the outset. This court's sole concern is the best interest of the child. This is not a contest between adults. Victoria's attorney, a sleek man in an expensive suit, presented first. He emphasized Victoria's biological connection to Lucy, her stable marriage, financial security, and willingness to provide Lucy with every advantage. He argued that Lucy would benefit from a fresh start away from the traumatic associations of Riverdale, and subtly suggested that Emily, while well-intentioned, had formed an inappropriate attachment to a child who was never intended to remain in her care. Richard countered with evidence of Lucy's remarkable progress under Emily's guardianship. He presented Dr. Parker's report, Jessica Thompson's assessment, and testimonials from Lucy's pediatrician and even Emily's neighbors who had witnessed the positive changes in the child. Lucy Miller has experienced severe neglect and abandonment, Richard argued passionately. For the first time in her young life, she has formed a secure attachment with a caregiver who has demonstrated unwavering commitment to her welfare. Uprooting her now, sending her across the country with relative strangers, however well-intentioned, would cause significant psychological harm at a crucial stage in her recovery. Throughout the presentations, Lucy sat quietly beside Emily, her rabbit clutched tightly, occasionally whispering questions that Emily answered in hushed tones. Victoria watched them with a tight smile, leaning occasionally to whisper to her husband or attorney. Finally, Judge Harmon addressed the elephant in the room. I'd like to hear from Lucy herself, she announced. Given her age and the nature of this case, I'll speak with her privately in my chambers. This was the moment Emily had simultaneously hoped for and dreaded. Lucy would have the chance to express her wishes directly to the judge, but she would have to do so alone, without Emily's reassuring presence. You're going to go with Judge Harmon for a little while, Emily explained gently to Lucy. She just wants to talk with you. Lucy's eyes widened in alarm. By myself? I'll be right here waiting, Emily promised. Just tell her the truth, whatever you're feeling. That's all you need to do. Lucy nodded solemnly, clutching her rabbit tighter as she allowed the court officer to lead her toward the judge's chambers. At the door, she turned back to look at Emily one last time, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. The waiting was excruciating. Emily sat rigidly in her seat, resisting the urge to pace. Victoria appeared equally tense, repeatedly checking her watch and whispering with her husband. After what seemed an eternity, but was probably less than 15 minutes, the door to the judge's chambers opened, and Lucy emerged. To Emily's surprise, she was smiling slightly, her posture more relaxed than when she'd entered. Instead of returning immediately to Emily, Lucy walked directly up to Victoria and David. Thank you for wanting to help me, she said clearly, her voice steady. But I already have a home now. With that simple declaration, she turned and walked back to Emily, climbing onto the seat beside her with newfound confidence. When Judge Harmon returned to the courtroom, her expression gave nothing away. She reviewed her notes for several moments while everyone waited in tense silence. Even Lucy, who'd been remarkably composed since her return from the judge's chambers, fidgeted slightly with her rabbit's ears. Before I render my decision, Judge Harmon began, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. I'd like to hear from one more witness. Mrs. Margaret Wilson. Emily turned in surprise as an elderly woman with silver hair and a walking cane made her way slowly to the witness stand. She recognized her immediately as the neighbor from the house next door to where Lucy had been found. The same neighbor who had called in the anonymous tip that ultimately led to Lucy's rescue. After being sworn in, Margaret adjusted her glasses and faced the judge. Mrs. Wilson, please tell the court about your observations regarding Lucy Miller prior to her removal from her mother's care, Judge Harmon instructed. Margaret's voice was soft but steady. I moved next door about a year ago, after my husband passed. At first, I saw Lucy occasionally with her mother. Sarah seemed distracted, but not obviously negligent. That changed gradually. I began noticing Lucy alone more often, sometimes looking out the window for hours. Did you report your concerns? The judge asked. Margaret nodded, shame crossing her face. Twice. The first time officers came but reported everything seemed fine. The second time, she hesitated. Sarah came to my door afterward, very upset. She said if I interfered again there would be consequences. I was frightened, but I still tried to help in small ways. What ways were those? I would leave food on my porch when I knew Lucy was alone. Sandwiches, fruit, things a child could easily eat. Sometimes I'd see her small hand reach out to take them. Margaret's eyes glistened with tears. The night of the emergency call, I heard a terrible commotion, breaking glass, shouting, then nothing. The silence was worse somehow. I was the one who called 911. Emily felt Lucy press against her side, seeking comfort as these details of her past were discussed. She wrapped a protective arm around the child's shoulders. In your observation, how long was Lucy left alone regularly? Judge Harmon asked. Days sometimes, Margaret replied, her voice breaking. I would see Sarah leave, obviously impaired, and not return for 2-3 days at a time. The house would be dark except for a small light in what I now know was Lucy's room. The courtroom was silent as the full impact of this testimony settled over everyone present. Victoria Mason had paled noticeably, her perfectly composed facade cracking for the first time, as she glanced at Lucy with what appeared to be genuine horror. After Margaret was dismissed, Judge Harmon called for a brief recess to review all the testimony and evidence. As they waited, Richard leaned over to Emily. Mrs. Wilson's testimony was powerful, he murmured, and whatever Lucy said to the judge in chambers clearly made an impression. Emily nodded, though she couldn't bring herself to feel optimistic yet. The legal preference for family placement was strong, and Victoria Mason presented well on paper. During the recess, Victoria approached them hesitantly, her husband slightly behind her. May I speak with you a moment? She asked Emily. Privately? Emily hesitated, reluctant to leave Lucy, but Richard offered to stay with her. Emily followed Victoria to a quiet corner of the hallway outside the courtroom. I had no idea, Victoria began, her composure faltering, about the extent of what happened to Lucy. Sarah and I haven't spoken in years, but I never imagined. Emily said nothing, waiting for Victoria to continue. When I learned about Lucy through a distant family friend, I felt obligated to step forward, family responsibility and all that. Victoria smoothed her already perfect hair, a nervous gesture. But hearing that neighbor's testimony, seeing Lucy's face as she listened, I'm not sure I'm what she needs right now. Emily studied the woman carefully, trying to determine if this was a strategic retreat or genuine concern for Lucy's welfare. Lucy needs stability and security, Emily said finally. She needs to heal from trauma that no child should experience. Victoria nodded, looking genuinely troubled. I believe I could provide financially for her, give her opportunities, but she glanced back toward the courtroom. The psychological aspects are beyond my experience, and taking her across the country, away from the first person she's learned to trust. She straightened her shoulders. I'm going to speak with my attorney. I think I may reconsider my petition. When court resumed, the unexpected happened. Victoria's attorney requested permission to address the court before the judge announced her decision. Your Honor, after careful consideration, and in light of today's testimony, Mrs. Mason wishes to withdraw her petition for custody of Lucy Miller at this time. A murmur ran through the courtroom as Victoria stood to address the judge directly. While I remain committed to being part of my niece's life, I recognize that what she needs most right now is stability and continued therapeutic support in her current environment. I would request instead that the court consider granting me visitation rights, with the possibility of reassessing a more permanent family connection when Lucy has had more time to heal. Judge Harmon regarded Victoria thoughtfully. This is an unusual development, Mrs. Mason. Are you certain this is what you wish to do? Yes, Your Honor, Victoria replied firmly. After hearing Mrs. Wilson's testimony and speaking with Lucy earlier, I believe this is in her best interest. Judge Harmon nodded, making notes before addressing the court again. In light of Mrs. Mason's withdrawal, the remaining petition before me is Emily Foster's request for continued guardianship. However, I still must determine whether this arrangement serves Lucy's best interests. The judge reviewed her notes once more before continuing. Having considered all evidence and testimony, including my private conversation with Lucy herself, I find that remaining in Chief Foster's care provides the stability and security essential to Lucy's continued recovery. Emily felt Lucy's small hand slip into hers and squeeze tightly. Therefore, I am granting Emily Foster's petition for guardianship to be reviewed again in 6 months. Additionally, I am ordering monthly visitation rights for Victoria Mason, to begin with supervised visits in progress as deemed appropriate by Lucy's therapist. The judge looked directly at Lucy. Young lady, the adults in this room have been working very hard to decide what's best for you. Is there anything you'd like to say before we conclude? Lucy hesitated, then stood, still holding her rabbit. Her voice was small but clear in the quiet courtroom. Thank you for listening to me, she said simply. Judge Harmon's stern expression softened slightly. You're very welcome, Lucy. That's an important part of my job. As they left the courthouse, Lucy skipping slightly beside Emily in a rare display of carefree childhood exuberance, Victoria approached them one last time. I'd like to keep in touch, she said to Emily. To be part of Lucy's life, even from a distance, if that's all right. Emily nodded, recognizing that Victoria's decision to withdraw her petition had shown genuine concern for Lucy's welfare. I think that could be good for Lucy eventually. Perhaps we could start with video calls when she feels comfortable. Victoria smiled, more genuinely than before. I'd like that. She knelt down to Lucy's level. I'm still learning how to be a good aunt, but I hope we can get to know each other better. No pressure, though. Lucy regarded her cautiously but nodded. You can meet Blue, she said, holding up her rabbit. He's shy too, but he gets braver. The simple gesture of inclusion made Victoria's eyes mist unexpectedly. I'd be honored to meet Blue properly, she said, her voice thick with emotion. As Victoria walked away to join her husband, Lucy looked up at Emily. Are we going home now? Home. The word had never sounded so sweet. Yes, Lucy, Emily answered, feeling the weight of the past weeks lifting from her shoulders. We're going home. That evening, as Emily tucked Lucy into bed, the child seemed more relaxed than she had been in days. The shadows under her eyes had faded, and she smiled more easily. Emily? Lucy asked as Emily adjusted the nightlight. Does this mean I get to stay with you forever now? Emily sat on the edge of the bed, considering how to explain the legal complexities in terms a 5-year-old could understand. The judge said, I'll be your guardian, which means I'm responsible for taking care of you, making sure you're safe and healthy and happy. Like a mom? Lucy pressed, her blue eyes serious in the dim light. The question caught Emily off guard. Since Lucy's rescue, they'd established a relationship built on trust and care, but neither had attempted to define it in familial terms. Guardianship is a legal term, Emily explained carefully. It means the court has officially said you'll live with me and I'll make decisions about your care. As for being like a mom, she hesitated. That's something different, something more about how we feel about each other than what a court decides. Lucy considered this, absently stroking Blue's worn fur. I think you're like what moms are supposed to be, she said finally. You make me feel safe, and you never forget me. The simple declaration, delivered with a child's straightforward honesty, brought unexpected tears to Emily's eyes. That means a lot to me, Lucy, she said softly. More than you know. Lucy yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. If I call you Mom someday, would that be okay? She asked sleepily. Emily's heart swelled with an emotion too big to name. That would be more than okay, she whispered. But there's no rush. We have time now to figure everything out together. Lucy nodded, already drifting toward sleep. Good night, she murmured. Good night, sweet girl, Emily replied, pressing a gentle kiss to Lucy's forehead. Sweet dreams. As she turned out the light, leaving the door ajar just the way Lucy preferred, Emily felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Lucy's recovery would take time. There would be setbacks and challenges, and the legal journey might not be over. But today had been a victory worth celebrating. For the first time since Lucy had come into her life, Emily allowed herself to truly imagine a future together. School events and birthday parties, holidays and ordinary Tuesdays, all the moments large and small that would shape Lucy's childhood from this point forward. A family. Unconventional. Perhaps, but no less real for having been forged through crisis rather than blood. As Emily settled on the couch with case files she'd neglected during the custody preparations, she heard a small sound from Lucy's room. Not a cry or whimper, but the soft, rhythmic breathing of a child sleeping peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was home, and she was loved. 6 months passed, bringing changes both subtle and profound. Autumn faded into winter, and the apartment that had once felt so inadequate for a child now bore unmistakable signs of Lucy's presence. Artwork taped to the refrigerator, a collection of children's books overflowing the new bookshelf in the living room, and colorful throw pillows that Lucy had selected herself on a shopping trip with Emily. Lucy had started kindergarten in September, a milestone that had filled Emily with equal parts pride and anxiety. After much discussion with Dr. Parker, they had decided on Riverdale Elementary, a small school with an excellent support system for children with special needs. Lucy's teacher, Ms. Chen, had experience working with traumatized children and had quickly earned Lucy's cautious trust. The first day had been difficult. Lucy had clung to Emily at drop-off, Blue Rabbit hidden in her backpack against school rules, but necessary for her courage. What if you forget to pick me up? She had whispered, giving voice to her deepest fear. Emily had knelt down, meeting Lucy's eyes. I will never forget you, Lucy. I will be waiting right here at 3 o'clock, no matter what. And she had been, leaving work early and waiting anxiously by the school gates, relief washing over her when Lucy emerged with a shy smile and a painting of what appeared to be Blue, the rabbit wearing a superhero cape. Now, in early February, Lucy bounded into the apartment after school, her cheeks flushed from the cold, eager to share the day's events. We're having a Valentine's party next week, she announced, hanging her coat on the low hook Emily had installed specially for her. Ms. Chen says we need to bring cards for everyone in class. Emily smiled, helping Lucy unpack her backpack. That sounds fun. We can make some special Valentines this weekend if you'd like. Lucy nodded enthusiastically, then hesitated. Can I make one for Aunt Victoria too? She sent me that book about the brave bunny. The relationship with Victoria had evolved cautiously over the months. After several supervised visits, they had progressed to regular video calls and occasional packages from Seattle. Victoria had proven surprisingly respectful of boundaries, never pushing for more than Lucy was comfortable with. I think Aunt Victoria would love that, Emily replied, pleased by Lucy's growing security. Only a child who felt safe could extend herself emotionally to new relationships. Later that evening, as Emily prepared dinner, her phone rang. It was Jessica Thompson from CPS, calling about their upcoming 6-month review hearing. Just checking in before next week, Jessica said. How's everything going? Really well, Emily replied, watching through the doorway as Lucy carefully set the table, a task she took very seriously. Lucy's thriving in school. Her therapy sessions are going well, and she's even sleeping through the night most of the time now. That's wonderful progress, Jessica said warmly. I've received glowing reports from Dr. Parker and Ms. Chen. Physically, she's gained weight and height, catching up to her age group, The judge will be pleased. And Emily hesitated, approaching the topic that had been on her mind for months. I wanted to discuss the possibility of adoption. There was a brief silence on the line. That's a significant step, Emily. It would mean terminating Sarah's parental rights permanently. I know, Emily acknowledged, lowering her voice so Lucy wouldn't overhear. But Sarah has made no effort to comply with the court's requirements for reunification. She's missed every scheduled visit, refused substance abuse treatment, and according to your last update, has left the state. All true, Jessica confirmed. She failed to appear at her last court date as well. The judge issued a bench warrant, but honestly, I'm not optimistic about her willingness to engage in the process. Lucy deserves permanency, Emily said firmly. She still asks sometimes if she'll have to leave despite all our reassurances. Adoption would give her the security she needs to fully heal. I don't disagree, Jessica replied thoughtfully. Let's discuss it at the review hearing next week. The judge may want to make one final attempt to engage Sarah before proceeding with termination of rights. But given the circumstances, I think your timeline is reasonable. After dinner, as Lucy took her bath, now a favorite activity rather than a source of anxiety as it had been initially, Emily sat on the bathroom floor, thinking about their journey together. She had returned to work part-time 3 months ago, arranging her schedule around Lucy's school hours, and finding reliable after-school care for the days when she needed to be at the station later. Commander Richards had been surprisingly supportive, allowing Emily to shift some of her responsibilities to administrative work that could be completed with more predictable hours. Her colleagues had pitched in as well, covering shifts when necessary and including Lucy in department family events. Emily? Lucy's voice interrupted her thoughts. The child sat in the bubble-filled tub, her wet hair slicked back, looking suddenly older than her 5 years. Can I ask you something important? Of course, sweetheart, anything. Lucy traced patterns in the bubbles, gathering her courage. At school, Zoe's mom is having a new baby. She said sometimes new kids come into families different ways, like how she was adopted. Emily nodded, sensing where this might be heading but allowing Lucy to find her own words. She asked if I was adopted too, and I didn't know what to say. Lucy looked up, her expression serious. Am I? Emily moved closer to the tub, sitting on its edge. Not yet, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Do you know what adoption means? Lucy nodded solemnly. Zoe says it means her forever. Family chose her special and no one can take her away, ever. That's a good way of explaining it, Emily agreed. Right now, I'm your guardian, which means I take care of you. But legally, things could still change. Adoption would mean that you would legally be my daughter forever. Lucy's eyes widened. You want me to be your real daughter? I already think of you as my real daughter in my heart, Emily said softly. Adoption would just make it official on paper. Lucy considered this, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. Would I have to call you Mom? The question held no judgment, just genuine curiosity, and Emily answered with equal honesty. You could call me whatever feels right to you, Lucy. Emily is still fine, or Mom, or anything else. What matters are the feelings, not the words. Lucy nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. If I'm adopted, would I have to change my name? That would be up to you too, Emily explained. Some children keep their names, some take their new family's name, and some do both. Lucy Foster, the child said experimentally, testing how it sounded. Or Lucy Miller Foster. She seemed to like the sound of the hyphenated version, smiling slightly. We don't have to decide anything right now, Emily assured her, reaching for a towel as Lucy stood up in the tub. It's just something for us to think about together. As she helped Lucy dry off and get into her pajamas, Emily marveled at how such a significant conversation could arise so naturally, folded into the ordinary routine of bath time. But that was how their relationship had developed, profound connections forming within the rhythm of daily life, trust built through 1,000 small moments of care and consistency. The 6-month review hearing was a stark contrast to the tense, custody battle of the previous summer. Judge Harmon, still presiding over Lucy's case, reviewed the reports from Lucy's teacher, therapist, and doctor with evident approval. "I'm pleased to see such positive progress," she commented, looking over her reading glasses at Emily and Lucy, who sat together at the table. Lucy, dressed in her favorite blue dress, legs swinging beneath her chair, appeared far more relaxed in the courtroom than she had during previous hearings. Jessica Thompson presented her assessment. "Lucy has demonstrated remarkable resilience. She's meeting or exceeding developmental milestones, forming appropriate peer relationships at school, and the attachment between her and Chief Foster continues to strengthen in healthy ways." Judge Harmon nodded, making notes before addressing Emily directly. "And how are you adjusting to the guardianship, Chief Foster? I understand you've returned to work on a modified schedule." "Yes, Your Honor," Emily confirmed. "The department has been very supportive in accommodating Lucy's needs. We've established routines that provide stability while allowing me to continue my professional responsibilities." "And the visitation with Victoria Mason? How is that progressing?" "Very positively," Emily replied. "Ms. Mason visits approximately once a month now, and they have weekly video calls. Lucy enjoys their relationship, and Ms. Mason has been respectful of boundaries." Victoria, who had chosen to attend the hearing, nodded her agreement from her seat in the gallery. Her husband David had accompanied her this time, both of them taking a genuine interest in Lucy's welfare that had surprised and gratified Emily. Judge Harmon turned her attention to Lucy. "And how are you doing, young lady? Are you happy in your home with Chief Foster?" Lucy nodded, suddenly shy under the judge's direct attention. "I have my own room," she offered. "And I'm learning to read. Emily helps me with the hard words." "That's wonderful," Judge Harmon said with a rare smile. "Is there anything else you'd like to tell me?" Lucy hesitated, then spoke with unexpected clarity. "I don't want to move anymore. I want to stay with Emily forever." The simple declaration hung in the air, powerful in its directness. Judge Harmon regarded Lucy thoughtfully. "I see," she said finally. "Thank you for telling me that so clearly." The judge reviewed her notes one last time before delivering her ruling. "Based on all evidence and testimony presented, I am extending Emily Foster's guardianship for another 6 months. Additionally," she continued, glancing at the notes from her private conversation with Jessica before the hearing, "I am directing the Department of Children's Services to begin termination of parental rights proceedings regarding Sarah Miller, given her consistent failure to comply with reunification requirements." Emily felt a rush of mixed emotions: relief that Lucy would remain with her, sadness for the final severing of Lucy's connection to her birth mother, and hope for the future they might build together. "This will open the path for adoption, should that be your intention," Judge Harmon added, looking directly at Emily. "It is, Your Honor," Emily confirmed without hesitation. The judge nodded briskly. "Then we'll reconvene in approximately 4 months for the termination hearing, assuming Ms. Miller does not suddenly engage with the process. Until then, continue the good work you're doing." As they left the courthouse, Lucy slipped her hand into Emily's, something she now did naturally and frequently. "Did the judge say I get to stay?" she asked, having followed the legal terminology with difficulty. "Yes," Emily confirmed, squeezing her hand gently. "You're staying with me, and we're taking steps so that you can stay forever," Lucy beamed,
skipping slightly as they walked to the car. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" Emily laughed, struck by how ordinary the request was, so different from the fearful, silent child she had rescued a year ago. "Absolutely. Ice cream is perfect for celebrations." Victoria and David caught up with them in the parking lot. "We were wondering if you both might like to join us for lunch before we head back to Seattle," Victoria suggested. "If that's not too much for one day," she added, showing the sensitivity she had developed regarding Lucy's emotional limits. Lucy looked up at Emily questioningly. "It's up to you, sweetheart," Emily said, leaving the decision in Lucy's hands. Lucy considered for a moment, then nodded. "Can we still have ice cream after?" Ice cream after lunch sounds like an excellent plan, David agreed with a wink. As the four of them walked together toward a nearby restaurant, Emily reflected on how their unconventional family had expanded and evolved. Victoria and David, once perceived as threats to her relationship with Lucy, had become allies and extended family, enriching Lucy's life rather than disrupting it. The future that had once seemed so uncertain now stretched before them, full of possibility and hope. There would be challenges ahead: the termination hearing, the adoption process, and the ongoing work of helping Lucy heal from her early trauma. But for now, on this bright winter day, Emily allowed herself to simply be present in the moment, grateful for the small hand in hers and the sound of Lucy's laughter as she skipped beside her. Spring arrived in Riverdale, transforming the town with bursts of color as dormant flowers awakened and trees adorned themselves with delicate blossoms. The seasonal change seemed to mirror the transformation in Lucy's life. What had once been dormant was now blooming with hope and possibility. The termination of parental rights hearing was scheduled for May, just 3 weeks away. Sarah Miller had made no contact despite multiple attempts by social services to reach her. The last confirmed sighting placed her in another state, apparently making no effort to comply with the reunification plan the court had established. On a sunny Saturday morning, Emily and Lucy worked together in the small community garden plot they had claimed as their spring project. Lucy, wearing overalls and a wide-brimmed hat, carefully patted soil around the tomato seedling they had just planted. "Will it grow tomatoes right away?" she asked, examining the tiny plant with fascination. "It needs time," Emily explained, demonstrating how much water to add. "Plants are like people, they need care and patience to grow strong." Lucy nodded seriously, absorbing this wisdom. "Like me?" Emily smiled. "Exactly like you. And look how much you've grown this year." It was true. Lucy had gained inches in height, her once thin frame filling out healthily. Her blonde hair, now grown past her shoulders, was pulled back in a messy ponytail that caught the sunlight. But the most remarkable growth had been invisible: her increasing confidence, her trust, her ability to express her feelings and needs. They finished their gardening. A familiar car pulled up nearby. Victoria and David emerged, waving as they approached. "Surprise visit," Victoria called. "We were in the area for David's conference and thought we'd stop by. Is that okay?" "Auntie." "Victoria!" Lucy exclaimed, running to greet them with an enthusiasm that would have been unimaginable months ago. "We're planting vegetables." The ease with which Lucy now navigated relationships with the adults in her life was a testament to her healing. Trust, once broken so severely, was rebuilding itself through consistent care and genuine connection. After washing up, they all walked to the local diner for lunch. Lucy chattered animatedly about school, her friends, and the upcoming spring concert where she would be singing with her kindergarten class. "We're doing You Are My Sunshine," she explained between bites of her grilled cheese sandwich. "I'm not scared, except maybe a little." "That's my favorite song," Victoria remarked, then added more quietly to Emily. "She seems so different now. So much more herself." Emily nodded, watching as Lucy demonstrated the hand motions for the song to David. "She's finding her voice in more ways than one." As they walked back to the apartment after lunch, Lucy skipping ahead with David, Victoria turned to Emily with a serious expression. "I've been served with papers for the termination hearing," she said. "As Sarah's closest relative." Emily nodded. "Jessica mentioned that would happen. Will you contest it?" Victoria shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. In fact, I've prepared a statement supporting the termination. Sarah has made her choices clear, and Lucy deserves the stability you're offering her." She hesitated, then added, "I hope this doesn't change our arrangement. I've come to cherish my role as Aunt Victoria." "Nothing will change," Emily assured her. "Lucy loves you, and I value the relationship you've built with her. Family comes in many forms." Ahead of them, Lucy's laughter rang out as David pretended to be a robot chasing her across the community park. The sound, so pure and uninhibited, was perhaps the most healing element of all. A child rediscovering joy after darkness, finding her place in a world that had once proven so unreliable. That night, as Emily tucked Lucy into bed, the child gazed up at her with serious blue eyes. "Emily, when I become your real daughter after the judge meeting, will you be happy?" Emily's heart swelled with emotion. "I'll be happier than I've ever been," she answered truthfully. "But you know what? In my heart, you're already my real daughter. The judge just makes it official for everyone else to see." Lucy smiled sleepily, clutching Blue the rabbit close. "In my heart, too," she whispered as her eyes drifted closed. The law offices of Turner and Associates were housed in a converted Victorian home near the Riverdale courthouse. Today, the conference room held a small gathering as Richard Turner reviewed the final adoption paperwork with Emily. Lucy sat at the far end of the long table, coloring contentedly, Blue the rabbit propped beside her. "Everything's in order," Richard confirmed, his usual professional demeanor softening as he glanced at Lucy. "The termination of parental rights was granted without contest last month. With Judge Harmon's support and all the positive reports, I expect the adoption hearing to be straightforward." Emily nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. The past 18 months had been a journey from that first desperate 911 call to this moment, approaching the permanence that Lucy so desperately needed and that Emily now couldn't imagine living without. "Any word from Sarah?" she asked quietly, mindful of Lucy's presence. Richard shook his head. "None. She didn't respond to any notifications, didn't appear at the termination hearing. Legally, we've fulfilled all obligations to notify her." Lucy looked up from her coloring. "Are you talking about my first mom?" Emily and Richard exchanged glances, surprised by Lucy's perception and directness. "Yes, sweetheart," Emily answered honestly. They had worked with Dr. Parker on age-appropriate ways to discuss Lucy's past. "We were talking about Sarah." Lucy nodded, returning to her coloring. "I remember her sometimes. She was sad a lot." The simple observation held no judgment, just a child's understanding of a complex situation. Dr. Parker had explained that as Lucy felt more secure, she would likely begin processing her early memories more openly. "That's right," Emily agreed. "She had a lot of grown-up problems that made it hard for her to take care of you properly." Lucy seemed satisfied with this response. "When I'm sad, I tell you or Dr. Parker or Ms. Chen," she stated matter-of-factly. "Then it gets smaller." Richard smiled, touched by the child's resilience. "That's very wise, Lucy." After reviewing the remaining documents, they set the adoption hearing date for the following month, coinciding with Lucy's 6th birthday. It seemed fitting to celebrate both beginnings together. Outside the law office, spring had fully embraced Riverdale. Lucy skipped beside Emily as they walked through the town square, stopping to admire the fountain where children tossed pennies for wishes. "Can I make a wish?" Lucy asked, eyeing the sparkling water. Emily handed her a penny. "Of course." Lucy closed her eyes tightly, clutching the penny in her small fist for a long moment before tossing it into the fountain with a determined flick of her wrist. The penny arced through the air, catching sunlight before disappearing beneath the surface with a satisfying plunk. "What did you wish for?" Emily asked, then quickly added, "Or is it a secret?" Lucy considered this seriously.
"I don't think it's a secret wish. I wish that when I'm bigger, I can help other kids find their forever homes too. Like you helped me." Emily blinked back sudden tears, amazed once again by Lucy's capacity for empathy despite her own difficult start. "That's a beautiful wish," she said, her voice slightly rough with emotion. As they continued walking, Lucy's hand firmly in hers, Emily reflected on their journey. The frightened, silent child from the dark basement had transformed into this thoughtful, increasingly confident little girl. There were still challenges, nightmares occasionally, anxiety around new situations, moments of insecurity, but the trajectory was unmistakable. Healing wasn't linear, Dr. Parker often reminded her. It was a winding path with occasional backtracking, but the overall direction mattered most. That night, as Lucy slept peacefully in her room, now painted a cheerful yellow and decorated with her own artwork. Emily sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. From desperate emergency to temporary, arrangement to chosen family, their story had unfolded in ways she could never have predicted. That night she answered Lucy's call for help. In just a few weeks, Lucy would legally become her daughter. The thought filled Emily with profound gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. One small girl's courage to reach out for help had changed both their lives immeasurably. Sometimes, Emily reflected, the most important calls for help come in the smallest of voices. Lucy's 6th birthday dawned with the kind of perfect summer weather that seemed custom-ordered for the occasion. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the apartment as Emily put the finishing touches on a homemade birthday cake decorated with blue frosting and 6 colorful candles. Today was doubly significant, not just Lucy's birthday, but also their adoption hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. at the family court. After months of paperwork, home studies, and legal proceedings, they had finally reached this momentous day. "Is it time yet?" Lucy called, bouncing into the kitchen wearing the special dress they had chosen together for the occasion. A sky-blue sundress with tiny white flowers embroidered around the hem. "Almost," Emily smiled, checking the time. "The small celebration with your friends is at the park at 11. Then we'll have lunch with Aunt Victoria and Uncle David before heading to the courthouse." Lucy nodded seriously, the schedule already committed to memory. She'd been counting down the days, marking each one with a crayon X on the calendar hanging in her room. "After court, will my name be Lucy Foster?" she asked, carefully helping to arrange paper plates and napkins on the table. "Lucy Miller Foster," Emily corrected gently. "Remember, we decided to keep Miller as your middle name to honor your history." Lucy nodded, seemingly satisfied with this arrangement. Dr. Parker had emphasized the importance of acknowledging Lucy's past while embracing her future, not erasing her history, but integrating it into her new identity. The birthday celebration at the park was a joyful affair. Lucy had invited 6 friends from kindergarten, along with their favorite teachers. As a surprise, several officers from the department showed up as well, including Rodriguez and Kelly, who had been part of Lucy's journey from the beginning. Lucy, once so wary of strangers, now moved among her guests with growing confidence, introducing friends to each other and proudly showing off Blue the rabbit, who wore a special bow tie for the occasion. After cake and presents, the crowd dispersed, leaving just the immediate circle for lunch at Lucy's favorite diner. Victoria and David had arrived from Seattle the previous evening, bearing gifts and excited about witnessing the adoption. They had become genuine family over the past year, their monthly visits a source of joy rather than anxiety. "Are you nervous?" Victoria asked Emily quietly as they watched Lucy chatting animatedly with David about her new art set. "A little," Emily admitted. "Not about the outcome, everything's arranged, but about the responsibility of it all. It's so permanent." Victoria smiled. "Parenthood always is, however you come to it. But I've never seen anyone more ready for it than you." As they drove to the courthouse, Lucy grew quieter, her earlier exuberance giving way to a more solemn mood. Emily glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Everything okay back there, birthday girl?" Lucy nodded, clutching Blue tightly. "I'm thinking about something important." "Want to share?" Lucy hesitated. "Will my first mom know about today?" It was a question Emily had anticipated eventually. "The court tried to tell her, but we don't know if she got the message. She hasn't been in contact for a very long time." Lucy absorbed this, her expression thoughtful rather than sad. "I hope she's not sad anymore, wherever she is." The compassion, in Lucy's statement, free from bitterness despite everything, touched Emily deeply. "That's a very kind thought, Lucy." At the courthouse, they were greeted by familiar faces. Jessica Thompson, now a friend as much as a professional contact, Richard Turner with his reassuring presence, and Judge Harmon, who had scheduled Lucy's adoption as her final case before retirement. The hearing itself was brief but profound. Judge Harmon reviewed the case history, noting Lucy's remarkable progress and the strong bond that had formed between her and Emily. When she asked Lucy if she understood what adoption meant, the child's answer was clear and confident. "It means Emily will be my forever mom, and I'll be her forever daughter, and no one can ever change that, not ever." As Judge Harmon signed the final decree, declaring Lucy officially and legally Lucy Miller Foster, daughter of Emily Foster, the small courtroom erupted in applause. Lucy beamed, the significance of the moment reflected in her shining eyes as she threw her arms around Emily in an uninhibited hug. "We're really family now," she whispered. "Forever and always." "Forever and always," Emily echoed, holding her daughter close, the words not just a promise but now a legal reality. 2 years seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. Lucy, now 8, had blossomed into a confident second grader with a reputation for looking out for other children. Her academic progress had exceeded all expectations, and her artwork regularly appeared on the Star Student Board at Riverdale Elementary. The apartment that had once seemed barely adequate for a child was now filled with the evidence of Lucy's life: school projects, books, the collection of stuffed animals that had joined Blue, still the favorite, and photos marking their journey together as a family. On a crisp autumn morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table reviewing police reports while Lucy ate breakfast before school. "Mom?" Lucy asked, using the name she had gradually adopted over the past year. "Can I ask you something important?" Emily set down her paperwork, giving Lucy her full attention. These important questions had become a familiar pattern, usually signaling that Lucy was processing something significant. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Lucy stirred her cereal thoughtfully. "Jessica came to talk to our class yesterday about her job at Child Services. She said sometimes kids need new families because their first families can't take care of them." Emily nodded, wondering where this was heading. "That's right. That's how you and I became a family. Zoe asked if I was a foster kid, and I said no, I'm adopted." Lucy looked up, her blue eyes serious. "But I was thinking, maybe we could foster a kid someday, someone who needs a safe place like I did." The question caught Emily by surprise. Though Lucy occasionally referenced her past, she rarely initiated discussions about other children in similar situations. "That's a big question," Emily said carefully. "Fostering is a serious responsibility. What made you think about it?" Lucy set down her spoon. Jessica showed pictures of kids waiting for homes. There was a little girl who looked scared like I was. I told Zoe maybe she could ask her parents, but then I thought, why not ask you? Emily's heart swelled with pride at Lucy's empathy and courage. "It's something we could think about for the future," she said honestly. "Right now, our focus has been on building our family, just you and me. But I'm touched that you're thinking about helping others." Lucy seemed satisfied with this answer. "Maybe when I'm 10, she suggested pragmatically. "I'd be a good big sister, I think." "You absolutely would," Emily agreed, amazed at how Lucy's painful past had shaped her compassion rather than hardening her heart. Later that day, after dropping Lucy at school, Emily found herself contemplating their conversation. What had begun as an emergency response to a child in crisis had transformed her life completely. The career-focused police chief had become a mother, her priorities and schedule rearranged around school events and bedtime routines. The department had adapted too. Emily had been promoted to commissioner last year, a position that offered more predictable hours and fewer dangerous situations, a change she had once would have resisted, but now welcomed for Lucy's sake. That evening, they walked together through the community garden where their vegetable plot was now yielding a late harvest of carrots and squash. Lucy chatted about her day, pausing occasionally to check on plants or greet neighbors. "Ms. Chen says our class is doing a special project on heroes," Lucy reported, carefully pulling a carrot from the earth and brushing off the soil. "We're supposed to write about someone who made a difference." "Sounds interesting," Emily replied. "Have you thought about who you'll write about?" Lucy nodded, examining the carrot with satisfaction before placing it in their basket. "I want to write about you, about how you answer calls for help and save people. But also," she hesitated, suddenly shy, About how you saved me and became my mom. Emily knelt down, meeting Lucy's eyes. I'd be honored. But you know, the story isn't just about me saving you. It's also about your courage, making that call, trusting me, building our family together. Heroes come in all sizes, Lucy. Lucy considered this, her expression thoughtful. Maybe it's a story about both of us then. The best stories usually are, Emily agreed, standing and offering her hand. About people finding each other when they need it most. As they walked home, hand in hand through the golden autumn afternoon, Emily reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate midnight call to a harvest day with her daughter, from rescue to family. Some calls for help changed everything. This one had saved them both. Mom, come quick!" Lucy's voice carried through the house with urgency that had Emily immediately setting down her coffee and hurrying from the kitchen to the living room. She found her 10-year-old daughter standing in front of the television, pointing excitedly at the local news broadcast. "Look, it's us!" Emily focused on the screen where the reporter was indeed standing outside Riverdale Elementary School, talking about a new community program. The camera panned to show a colorful banner, Safe Voices Initiative, if you need help, just ask. The program, spearheaded by Police Commissioner Emily Foster and inspired by her daughter Lucy's experience, trains teachers and community members to recognize signs of child endangerment and creates multiple safe channels for children to seek help, the reporter explained. The segment cut to a brief interview Emily had given the previous week, discussing the importance of making help accessible to vulnerable children. Then, with permission, they showed a few seconds of Lucy speaking to a classroom of younger students, her voice clear and confident. "Even if you're really scared, there's always someone who will listen if you're brave enough to ask." Lucy turned to Emily, her eyes shining. "They showed the part where I was talking. Do you think some kids might see it and get help like I did?" Emily pulled Lucy into a hug, amazed once again by the remarkable person her daughter was becoming. "I think it's very possible. That's why we started this program, right?" The Safe Voices initiative had begun as a small idea 3 years earlier, shortly after Lucy's adoption was finalized. Emily had been increasingly troubled by how many systemic failures had to occur before Lucy's desperate call for help finally reached someone who would act. How many other children were out there, suffering in silence because they didn't know how or where to ask for help? What had started as a pilot program at Riverdale Elementary had expanded to all schools in the district, then to community centers, libraries, and now was being adopted by neighboring counties. Lucy, initially shy about sharing her story, had gradually become more comfortable speaking to small groups of children, explaining in age-appropriate terms how she had found the courage to make that crucial call. "Remember, we have the presentation at the community center this afternoon," Emily reminded Lucy as she turned off the television. "Are you still feeling okay about it?" Lucy nodded, her blonde hair bouncing around her shoulders. "Ms. Parker helped me practice. I'm not too nervous anymore." Dr. Parker, Amelia now, to both of them outside of therapy sessions, had remained an important presence in their lives. Though Lucy's regular therapy had concluded last year, they still checked in monthly, a preventative measure they both valued. "I've been thinking about what you said about sharing more of my story," Lucy continued, following Emily into the kitchen where breakfast waited, "about the dark and being alone." Emily paused, giving this her full attention. They had always been careful about how much of Lucy's early trauma was shared publicly. While Lucy's general story was known, a child rescued from neglect who found a new home with the police chief who saved her, the most painful details had remained private. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Emily asked carefully. "There's no rush, you know." Lucy sat at the table, absently petting Blue the rabbit, who still accompanied her to important events despite showing significant wear from years of faithful service. "I think it might help some kids," she said thoughtfully. "The ones who are scared to tell because they think no one will believe them. I want them to know someone will listen." Emily sat beside her daughter, struck by her wisdom and courage. At 10, Lucy had developed a remarkable ability to transform her painful experiences into something hopeful and helpful for others. "If you feel ready," Then I support you, Emily said. But promise you'll tell me if it gets overwhelming or you change your mind. There's no shame in setting boundaries. Lucy nodded solemnly. I promise. That afternoon, the community center was filled beyond capacity. The Safe Voices initiative had gained significant attention, attracting social workers, teachers, law enforcement, officers, and community leaders from throughout the region. Emily spoke first, outlining the program's structure and early success statistics before introducing Lucy. Emily watched with pride as her daughter approached the microphone. Blue clutched, in one hand her note cards in the other, though still small for her age, likely a lasting effect of her early malnutrition. Lucy carried herself with quiet confidence. My name is Lucy Miller Foster, she began, her voice steady. When I was 5 years old, I was locked in a dark room for days. I was hungry and scared and alone. She paused, letting the stark reality of those words sink in. I didn't think anyone would help me because no one ever had before, but I found an old phone, and I remembered the numbers my grandmother taught me before she died. 911. The room was absolutely silent as Lucy continued, describing in simple terms how that call had changed her life, how she had learned to trust, again, and how everyone deserved to feel safe and loved. Sometimes children don't ask for help because they don't know how, or they're too scared, or they think it's their fault, she explained. That's why grown-ups need to look harder and listen better. And that's why other kids need to know it's okay to tell someone if they're not safe. In the audience, Emily noticed several people discreetly wiping away tears. Victoria and David had flown in from Seattle for this event and sat in the front row, Victoria's face shining with pride for her niece. Margaret Wilson, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, nodded encouragingly from her seat near the aisle. As Lucy concluded her speech to enthusiastic applause, Emily felt a familiar combination of heartache for what her daughter had endured and fierce pride for the person she was becoming, someone who refused to let her trauma define her, who instead channeled it into making the world safer for others. Later that evening, as they walked home through the park, Lucy skipping ahead, occasionally to examine interesting leaves or chat with neighbors, Emily marveled at the journey they had traveled together. You were amazing today, she told Lucy as they paused by the fountain where, years earlier, Lucy had wished to help other children find their forever homes. Lucy smiled, the open, unguarded smile that had once been so rare but now came easily. Remember my wish? She asked, nodding toward the fountain. I do, Emily confirmed. You're making it come true. Lucy considered this, then shook her head slightly. Not just me. We are. Together. As they continued walking, hand in hand in the golden autumn light, Emily reflected on the mysterious ways life unfolded. What had begun with a desperate call from a frightened child had transformed into something neither of them could have imagined. Not just a rescue, not just a family, but a mission shared between mother and daughter to ensure other children found their voices and their safe harbors too. Some calls weren't just answered. They were amplified, echoing forward to touch countless other lives in ways that could never be fully measured, but would forever matter. The sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows of Riverdale Community Center, casting colorful patterns across the gathered crowd. The space was filled to capacity, every seat taken, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. A special occasion had brought them together, the 10th anniversary of the Safe Voices initiative. Lucy Miller Foster, now 15, stood at the podium, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her blue eyes scanning the audience with confident poise. At 5'4", she was no longer the tiny, fragile child rescued from darkness, but a poised young woman with her mother's determination and compassion etched into her features. 10 years ago, she began, her voice clear and steady. A frightened, 5-year-old girl made a phone call that changed her life. That little girl was me. Emily watched from the side of the stage, her heart swelling with pride. Over the years, Lucy had grown comfortable sharing her story, understanding its power to inspire change. The frightened child who had hidden in closets at unexpected sounds had blossomed into an eloquent advocate for children's safety. I don't remember much about my life before that call, Lucy continued. But I remember the darkness. I remember the fear. And I remember thinking that no one would ever come for me. She paused, her fingers lightly touching the worn blue rabbit that sat on the podium beside her notes. Blue, her faithful companion through everything, now served as both a talisman and a powerful visual reminder of her journey. But someone did come. And that changed everything. Not just for me, but eventually for thousands of other children who needed a voice, who needed someone to listen. In the decade since its inception, the Safe Voices initiative had expanded nationwide. What began as a small local program had grown into a comprehensive framework adopted by schools, community organizations, and police departments across the country. The statistics displayed on the screen behind Lucy told a remarkable story. Over 15,000 children reached, more than 2,000 directly connected to life-changing interventions, countless others supported before crisis points. The most important thing I've learned, Lucy said, her gaze sweeping across the audience, is that healing isn't just about being rescued. It's about rebuilding trust, finding your voice, and eventually using that voice to help others. It's about transforming pain into purpose. Emily noticed Lucy's hands tremble slightly, the only visible sign of the emotion behind her composed exterior. Some wounds never fully disappeared, but they had transformed from open injuries to marks of strength and survival. Today, we celebrate not just how far we've come, but how many journeys toward healing have begun because someone was brave enough to ask for help, and someone else was brave enough to listen. As Lucy concluded her speech, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Emily moved forward to join her daughter on stage, accompanied by Jessica Thompson, now the director of the state's Child Protection Services, and Victoria Mason, who had become the Seattle branch coordinator for Safe Voices. What had once been an adversarial triangle had transformed into a powerful alliance of women dedicated to the same cause, their different perspectives strengthening their collective impact. The reception following the ceremony buzzed with energy as community members, officials, and supporters mingled. Lucy moved confidently through the crowd, engaging with everyone, from the mayor to the youngest volunteers with the same genuine attention. "She's extraordinary," Margaret Wilson commented, now in her 90s but still sharp-minded, watching Lucy from her seat of honor near the refreshment table. "To think of where she started and where she is now," Emily nodded, following her gaze. "She's the strongest person I know." "She had the right foundation to build on," Margaret replied, patting Emily's hand. "You gave her that." Later that evening, as the event wound down, Emily found Lucy sitting alone on a bench in the community center's garden, seemingly lost in thought. "Hey there," Emily said softly, sitting beside her. "Quite a day." Lucy smiled, leaning slightly against her mother's shoulder, a gesture that had remained constant through the years, even as Lucy navigated the sometimes turbulent waters of adolescence. "I was just thinking about her," Lucy said quietly. "About Sarah." Emily nodded, understanding immediately. Sarah Miller had remained a complex absence in Lucy's life. Despite all efforts, they had never located her after she disappeared from Riverdale. Occasional unconfirmed reports suggested she was still alive, still struggling with addiction, but nothing concrete had materialized. "She missed so much," Lucy continued. "I wonder sometimes if she ever thinks about me, if she knows what happened after everything." "I'm sure she does," Emily said gently. "No matter her struggles, you were her daughter. That's not something anyone forgets." Lucy nodded, silent for a moment. "I used to be angry at her," she admitted. "Then I felt sorry for her. Now I mostly just hope she found help somewhere, like I did." The maturity in Lucy's perspective never failed to move Emily. At 15, Lucy understood complexities that many adults struggled to grasp, the way trauma cycles through generations, the thin line between victim and perpetrator, the power of intervention at crucial moments. "You know, Lucy said, straightening up. I've been thinking about what comes next. For the initiative? Emily asked. For me, Lucy clarified. I'm going to apply for the peer counseling program at school. Ms. Chen says they need someone to work specifically with the younger kids who come in through Safe Voices. Emily smiled, unsurprised by this natural evolution of Lucy's path. You'd be wonderful at that. And I've been researching colleges with strong social work programs, Lucy continued, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. It's still a few years away, but I want to be prepared. As they walked home together through the familiar streets of Riverdale, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The emergency call that had connected them had lasted less than a minute. A frightened child's whispered plea for help, but its echoes continued to ripple outward, touching lives neither of them would ever meet, creating possibilities neither could have imagined. They passed the fountain in the town square, where Lucy had once tossed a penny and wished to help other children find their forever homes. Your wish came true, Emily observed, nodding toward the fountain. In ways bigger than either of us could have imagined. Lucy smiled, her expression peaceful in the soft evening light. The best wishes do that, I think. They grow beyond what we can see when we make them. As they reached their home, no longer the small apartment, but a cozy house with a yard where Lucy had insisted on planting a garden for hungry children that donated its harvest to local food banks. They paused at the gate. 10 years, Lucy mused. Sometimes it feels like forever, and sometimes it feels like yesterday. That's how the most important journeys work, Emily replied, putting her arm around her daughter's shoulders. They become part of who we are. Inside, their home bore the marks of their shared life. Photographs chronicling Lucy's growth, awards from both their achievements, the well-worn couch where they still sometimes sat together during thunderstorms when old fears surfaced. Blue. The rabbit had his place of honor on Lucy's bookshelf, alongside journals filled with her thoughts, dreams, and increasingly sophisticated artwork. That night, as the house settled into silence, Emily stood in the doorway of Lucy's room, watching her daughter sleeping peacefully. The scared child who had once checked locks and hidden in closets now rested easily, secure in the knowledge that she was safe, she was loved, and she had found her voice. The most powerful transformations, Emily reflected, often began with the smallest acts of courage. A frightened child finding the strength to ask for help, a single person choosing to listen and respond. From such moments, whole lives could change course, rippling outward to touch countless others in an ever-expanding circle of healing and hope. Some stories that began in darkness didn't just find their way to light, they became beacons themselves, guiding others toward safety and possibility. Lucy's story had become such a beacon, illuminating paths for children still waiting in their own dark places, showing them that help could arrive, healing was possible, and voices, even the smallest ones, deserved to be heard. In the quiet of her daughter's room, Emily whispered the promise that had shaped their journey from its very beginning. You are safe, you are loved, and your voice matters, always.